Hello, Ed.
Jason, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How's quarantine and staying at home? How's it going for you?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, got into a nice little bit of a routine using my one exercise token at the moment. So yeah, it's going good. Yeah, it's a golden age
Yeah,
of cooking as well. Gotta say, cooking and baking never been better.
absolutely. And you're washing your hands. You're protecting the NHS.
Constantly. Yeah, yeah.
Constantly. Good.
Getting the
Got the clap.
clap on tonight.
Good. Good. Thursday 8 p.m. Yeah, I'm out in the country, so no one hears me clap. So, but I do it just for the buzz. Just for the
Yeah,
buzz. Um,
yeah.
right. Let's get down to business, Ed. What's your job title, and what does that mean in one sentence?
Ooh, okay, well, I am the planning director at Ardmore, and I suppose in a nutshell, what that means is my job is very much about looking at trends, industry trends, business trends for our clients, and I'm probably looking more closely at consumer behaviours and how those change, how those adapt across different sectors. And in all of that, in the blend, you'll normally find some interesting insights that we take and present to clients, and try and act on those to try and sort of stay ahead of, I suppose, what consumers want, before they potentially even know that they want that thing. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's it. Lots of reading, lots of listening.
Excellent. That was a long sentence, but we'll let you have that. So you were awarded the top 50 under 50 in Belfast. Is that right?
40 under 40. I'm so insulted, Jason.
Oh, that's 40. Sorry. I thought it was
I'm
actually 30 under
quite
30.
clearly under 50. Yeah, no, last year I was in the 40 under 40. Yeah,
Excellent. Where were you placed in that top 40?
it's there's a winner, and then you're just on a list. So there
Uh,
is no
like a
there's
participation award.
yeah. I basically got a yeah. I got a badge for trying.
That's good, man. That's good. How many awards do you think I've won in my career, Ed?
I too quite
Zero.
Jason.
Zero awards.
Really?
I know.
Not
Shocking,
even
isn't
for
it?
projects?
Nothing, nothing, just not good enough. But moving on quickly. So you recently worked you did a presentation at the Ardmore Alliance, and everyone spoke very highly of it. So we thought, let's record that, let's put it online, and share some of that great content with the people of the world. So do you want to fire away and share your
Yeah.
presentation with us?
Let me bring it up on screen.
Don't worry, we can edit this a little bit out. Oh, excellent! I can see it.
Cool. Can you see that? Okay.
Perfectly.
Lovely, lovely. Okay, well, yeah. So, I suppose let me just give the quick bit of context about this presentation. Where it was, as you say, it was for the Ardmore Alliance. So, um, this is a sort of monthly meeting where a lot of our clients get together, share views, frustrations, things like that, and we kind of come in with presentations or thought starters to kind of help stir the thinking and sort of get a bit of sort of healthy debate going where they can kind of share and learn from each other. Really, really valuable sessions, and obviously in the backdrop of what we're all facing right now, there was only really one kind of thing that we could talk about and that people could talk about. And so I pulled together a very, very quick presentation, just on lots and lots of different sort of points of view, things to consider over the next few weeks, months, maybe even years, for brands, in the backdrop of the coronavirus, how that's affecting things. And I was trying to think of a really, really clever title to put on it, which kind of summated my point of view, that sort of the most important thing that I would say to brands right now, and it's this idea of having to steer into the skid, which is obviously, it's a very, very daunting time. It's brands are suffering, businesses are suffering, jobs are being lost. It's a really, really difficult time. But having said that, there is opportunity for brands to help, to add value in people's lives, to be supportive, to be empathetic, and as difficult as that might feel, it's important for them to at least consider the option of that rather than the default of maybe just doing nothing and burying the head in the sand. Staring into the skid is an uncomfortable phrase. It's an uncomfortable thing to do, actually. But also it is something that we have to keep in the back of our minds, something we have to consider.
Yeah.
That's basically what the presentation is about. It's about whether we should talk, and if we should, how should we talk? And I suppose the first thing I would say on all of this is there is probably since mid-March, actually since before that, since February, there has been a snowball of research reports, of white papers, of points of view, of webinars, of some absolutely fascinating sources of information and research around this topic. And there's actually so much right now, whereas when it all started, we were looking to things that were being said in 2003 with the SARS outbreak. We were looking to 2007, 8, 9 recession time stuff.
1918 Spanish flu, to see if there's any insight from then.
Any insights from there? Yeah. What were Kantar up to then? There was loads and loads and loads of stuff from other things, but not a lot here. In the last couple of months, it's just blown up in terms of the number of global research reports and insights and things like that have happened. So fair play to all of those companies. What we've tried to do with this, as I say, is keep it really, really top line, pull out some of the key nuggets and things that have really caught our eye that we think that certainly businesses can get some value from. So that is pretty much the content of this thing. So I'll jump straight into it. So this first thing is from this is the Kantar sort of, they've been doing a consumer barometer around all of this. It's a global study of about 35,000 consumers, and this was from March. And some of the really, really interesting stats that were coming out of this is that 8% of people research thought that brands should stop advertising. So like only 8%. And like, I'm not going to lie, but I sort of personally thought that would have been way higher when I first saw this research. But when you take a bit of a step back on the situation, and like I even think about my own experiences in this, half of what I've been doing in lockdown is thinking about the things that all of a sudden I really, really need or crave to kind of help me adapt. And brands play a really critical role in that as well. So I suppose in that kind of context, in my own personal context, I can kind of understand that. 78% of consumers believing brands should help them in their daily lives. So this one's really interesting, and it's this idea of brands becoming a public service. And it's something I touch on later, but it's this idea that they need to move into a more sort of empathetic, eye-level position with consumers. And the brands that are doing that at the moment are doing it really, really well, and people are responding to that. 75% saying brands should inform people of what they're doing, and that refers to what they're doing in the wake of this situation. And that idea, it sort of starts to hint at why transparency is important in communications right now. And again, I'll touch on this quite shortly, but this is about helping to prompt a recovery position. So being transparent about what you're doing is actually starting to build confidence in your brand so that when things start to stabilize or at least normalize, you're in a better recovery position than you were before. And then this final stat, which is 74%, think companies should not exploit the situation. It goes without saying. But I think to comment on that, the interesting point here is like what we're seeing is like loads and loads of shades of gray in this point. Like brands that have their hearts in the right place, but are coming across as sort of slightly exploitive of the situation, slightly opportunistic of the situation. And it's a real balancing act on getting that right. So
that's an odd stat. Does that mean that 26% think that brands should exploit the situation? That's an odd one, isn't it? What does 26% of people do in their lives?
I know. Very, very strange. Like, I don't know why people how that specific point was phrased, but I think like for me, there is sort of, as I say, these shades of grey where, brands are doing it without even necessarily knowing that they're doing it. And I think that's quite interesting. Again, it's something I sort of touch on later on in this presentation. So I suppose in all of that, like some headline stats as to, how people or the expectations that people have of brands. Moving on then, I suppose one of the things it's worth saying is that there, again, from a previous Kantar piece of research, it's this idea that if brands sort of this was taken from I believe it was like a sort of fictional beer brand study that they did, but the net effect on brand health or brand equity 6 months after cutting TV ads, it's all effectively negative, in as much as, you know, total brand communication awareness drops, mentions drops, purchase or intention to purchase all kind of drops, even trial drops. So this sort of is 6 months after cutting TV ads. This idea of what you do now will affect things in the future is actually really, really important for brands to consider, and help them sort of define their position as to whether or not to steer into the skid, if you like. But I suppose this point and this slide as well starts to kind of hint at this idea of recovery and the importance of what we do now to help prompt that recovery. Brand Z, or Brand Z if you're American, is a kind of another sort of global, I suppose it's sort of research, insight, rankings of sort of brands based on their equity, based on their strength, how much people love them and that kind of thing. Really, really interesting annual stuff that comes out from that. And one of the things that they looked at was how brands recovered from, or the variance in how brands recovered after the recession and sort of 2008, 2009 period. So if you look at this graph, you kind of see that actually the top 10 most powerful brands in the world recovered 9 times faster than the sort of Standard & Poor 500, which is really interesting in as much as they were sort of, those brands were talking at the time where it felt difficult to talk. Marketing, advertising, communications sort of takes a backseat to survival. But those brands sort of saw a need to do it because they were thinking about equity, they were thinking about protecting their sort of their brand health, if you like, and they benefit from that, you know, 10 years later, because they put themselves into a much better recovery position. And thinking about those, I suppose the changing dynamics in sort of downturns or the, you know, any kind of crisis situation, it's really interesting to look at what the sort of different aspects and different sort of, you know, things of how things change. One of the interesting things that's coming through right now is that newspapers are sort of reporting that they're set to lose about 50 million quid in online ads because brands are blacklisting the word coronavirus. So they obviously don't want their brand to be associated with something that's causing people pain and anxiety and frustration and things like that. So these digital...
If you looked at the BBC website last night, the top 10 articles, I know they don't do advertising there, but the top 10 articles on the BBC all started with coronavirus. So these are the most read articles online. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, this for me is like a really, really, really nice example of where things that are sort of the norm before a time like this actually need to be looked at in a little bit more detail, because, you know, there's newspapers saying they're going to lose massive revenue because brands are saying coronavirus is a dirty word. But actually, what we should be looking at is what people are doing in terms of their behavior. This is an eye tracking study by a company called Lumen, and this is on a newspaper. Obviously, it's not an online ad or anything like that. But the point they were making, and they've done a lovely piece of work around this, is that this is what everyone's looking at. You know, I mean, the blacklists in this sense should actually be reversed. What brands should be doing is not blocking that stuff, but searching it out and getting close to it, because that's, you know, that's what people are interested in. So real sort of interesting challenge there, but like what was once normal, blacklisting words and staying away from stories that, you know, when it's something as big as this, actually you have to consider the sort of the need to stay closer to it, so you get more eyeballs and a more attentive audience. And at potentially lower cost per click, or all those other media metrics and things like that. So that's kind of a really good example as to things that should be considered in the context of all of this. I touched on this before, but it's this idea of, if you're going to talk, how should you talk, or what should you say? And I think this idea of the message balance, it being more delicate than ever, is really, really important. And I use this example of Brewdog, the sort of the beer producer, who were really, really quick and off the mark to create this hand sanitizer, which was met with like really, really mixed reactions. Some people thought it was fantastic, and there was a shortage of this stuff. And at the time, this was maybe a month ago, probably longer. This came out, and they were straight off the bat on making this stuff. And then other people were going, "Oh, it's really, really opportunistic and quite me." I don't know where I sit on this argument, but I do think that the learning for me is that what might seem like, and I sort of said this before, even if it seems like your heart's in the right place, this balance of how people are going to take these things has never been more delicate. So it's about being really, really, really careful. And I'm going to give that sort of, I suppose, an exclusive.
Like some impartial data, like a bit of a wider set, because sometimes the loudest people on Twitter complaining about stuff aren't necessarily the voice of the people. They're just the biggest complainers. So I wonder, like, in terms of like percentages, what was it like, positive to negative sentiment? That would be interesting to have a look at another time, because from my point of view, it was like brilliant. Like, why aren't more brands helping where they can? So yeah, I find some people just complain about stuff, and you can't please.
Yeah. I think I've sort of read so much about this, and to be honest, loads and loads of other examples as well, that it's difficult to make your own mind up. But I think the interesting parts of this all lie in research, and I mean researching your own consumers and understanding your own consumers. And I'll come on to a client of ours that won't mind sharing some exclusive research around that, and how they've sort of put themselves into a position where they know how they're going to talk, which is fantastic. And in a nutshell, I suppose that's the most important thing about this section. So again, from that same Kantar report, global study, 35,000 consumers in March, over 50% of people think brands should talk as they have always done. And I think that idea of sort of tone and being honest and transparent is really important in all of this. Like, don't change your position because that might gauge a reaction from people. 50% of people think companies should talk about their own brand in a sort of a carefree and light way. I suppose this leans into this idea that right now, and one of the things, certainly Ardmore is part of the Worldwide Partners sort of network of global agencies. One of the things, Jason, as you well know, is coming through from the Far East. We're sort of much further ahead in the curve on this, is that this idea of like brands providing light relief. It's always been a trend, it's always been a thing, but sort of doubling down on that and now more than ever. So brands providing that sort of as best they can, that degree of light relief, of escapism.
It's a simple point, but I think it's an important one, is that it depends what your brand is. Like, if you've never done humor, if you've never done light relief, then don't try and switch and be a comedian now. That's the worst thing you could do. But if you're a KFC, if you're a Nando's, if you're Guinness, and you've produced those, you've always had that in your repertoire of light relief, small entertainment. It doesn't have to be comedy. It could be something empathetic. It could be something positive. Just speak as genuinely as you can. I think that's really important.
Absolutely, 100%. And in this final point, I'm not a funny person, but 41% of people think brands should avoid humorous tones. And I think that is, for me, that really, like, define humor. And you were sort of touching on that slightly just as you were talking there, Jason. I think that is for me, that's the sort of the dangerous territory. I think that offset against that first point, brands should talk as they always have done, is really important. Just toe the line, follow your guidelines, follow your tone of voice, and be what what you've always been. And if that is, as you say, sort of carefree, lighthearted, that kind of thing, then be that. But try not to, I suppose, veer into unfamiliar territories. So then I touched on this before, but it's this idea up at the top. I was talking about brands behaving as like a public service, and this is really about brands sort of putting their hands to the pump and doing good for people. So again, as you can see, a lot of stuff coming from Kantar, who have been absolutely exceptional, sort of at providing research and insights and reports and stuff like that over the last while. And they, again, from that same piece of research, we're talking about how brands should behave as an employer within the wider community and direct to consumer. So again, as an employer, it's about empathy, sort of flexible working, protecting their health. And in there it even says to stop advertising and sort of promote digital communications tools. So this idea that actually, as an employer, adding real value to the people that you need to look after and things like that, wider community, consumer and stuff. It's about supporting the government, donations to hospitals, and donations to research, and in terms of consumers, it's about protecting the supply chain, getting them what they need, and offering promos. Lots and lots of brands offering discounted promos right now, which is actually brilliant, because what you're looking for is, certainly me, and I've been trying to get into running and lose a bit of weight. So it's been about trainers and things like that. And, your Nikes and your Adidas's have all had 20-25% off and things like that. It's been brilliant and really, really helpful. And something that, brands, the brands that are winning, so to speak, are trying to do. So they're still, there are benefits to consumers, but they're still making a profit. And that's very much the sweet spot. Yeah. But the expectation is that brands really need to, they need to care in amongst all of this.
Yeah, I was gonna say on that as well. The great one as well have been giving online classes or anything that's online that you usually would pay for, getting a 2-week free trial or a 1-month free trial at this time. And all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, I definitely need that. But it's something maybe you'd never have considered as a consumer in the past. So a lot of free trials, a lot of taster sessions, and all of a sudden you're hooked on it and you're like, I need this now. This is excellent.
That's it. Yeah. You're more sort of, I guess, you value that more, because this is such a, this is a period where you overly rely on things like on-demand services or, things that can be delivered direct to your door, ease, things like that. But this idea that brands behaving as a public service for their employers, the wider community, for their consumers, their loyal consumers, new consumers, actually comes from this idea that what the social media noise globally right now, and one of the insights that's coming through is that people are caring. Everyone's anxious. Everyone's to a degree. Everyone's slightly worried. What's coming through is people are actually less worried about themselves and more worried about others, and people who are more vulnerable, and people who are more at risk, and friends, family, peers, who people being slightly more concerned about others getting sick or others being affected by coronavirus. So this idea that because consumers are being so, I suppose, caring in how they feel about other people, the expectation is that brands have to follow suit. So brands have to care about consumers as well, rather than I suppose protecting their own patch. And that's really the sort of the link between those two types of things. So again, back to this idea of thinking how to talk, really important to think about how to talk in the context of how people are feeling. And there is this, overwhelming sense of, I'm not worried about the coronavirus affecting me, and as I am about it affecting the people that I know and love. I don't want it to spread to at-risk groups, that type of thing. So it's this idea of putting, others first. And as a brand, I suppose you have to put consumers first. How can I add value to consumers? And then I suppose the question then becomes, how can we, as a business, or can we benefit from that? Can we make a profit from that? Because that can't be a dirty word either. That has to be, that has to be in the mix. These are businesses; they have to keep going. And there's people's jobs, people's lives at stake as well. So I know that sounds really sort of like a big kind of ominous point, but I think it has to be made, because we're already seeing it on a daily basis. More businesses and more brands kind of going, I can't sit on my hands. I have to do something. I have to, we have to find a way. We have to pivot. We have to, evolve quicker. Digital transformation has to take a front seat, or, whatever it is that is going to keep us kind of in the mix and get our product out there. I touched on it before, but one of our clients, in terms of sort of finding their position in this new normal, they've gone into a sort of a very comprehensive piece of research, which they've shared with us, and it's the National Trust, fantastic brands who we're proud to work with. They shared with us just some really headline research that they've done. But as I say, this work was done to try and find their position in all of this, which is just such it's just the real sort of the best way to think about things. Let's understand how our people feel, and let's work with them and let's support them. So this idea that high increasing worries about fundamental needs affect the majority of people, of course. But some people in more secure situations are more worried by the implications of lockdown and looking for ways to connect and keep occupied. And that's over-indexing amongst National Trust supporters. Over 3/4 of people cutting down on non-essential spending, and then expect the impact on their finances to last until the end of the year. But people expecting to see a longer-term positive impact on communities as a result of lockdown. So all of a sudden, you can start to see how all of those things, all of those insights, start to help the National Trust, a brand like the National Trust, understand their place in all of this. So people worried about their financial implications, and concern, disappointment due to implications for their own experiences, and then this positive and negative reaction to the role that we play within national crisis. Yeah. They've kind of been able to adapt to that, and basically say to themselves, well, more now than ever, we've got to focus as a brand on what people need, not what we do. We and our cause are actually secondary, and we can help people looking for help and hope in terms of connection, learning, and engagement. You're already seeing this from this brand. They're trying to give people a window into the future and show what things are going to be like once we get out of all of this. Doing some really good stuff, and being careful to get the balance right. These are their words, not mine. Between the idea of sort of maintaining support in the longer term and kind of helping people in the here and now. And then, I suppose just kind of other things, online, social, only working for some of our audiences, even the lockdown situation where more people are kind of veering into digital, acknowledging that some of the people that rely on National Trust don't have that sort of, they're not digital natives. So how do we connect with them as well? So I suppose that's just a kind of a quick hop, skip, and a jump through, a client of ours that's taken a really sort of proactive and measured approach to all of this. Let's look at our audience, let's look at our consumers, let's hear what they have to say, let's hear how they're feeling, and let's work with them on that. And I suppose, and ultimately that's kind of that's it from this presentation. But that is a kind of a really important thing to consider in all of this. If you're worried about steering into the skid or not, or you're worried about how to talk, look at your audiences and speak to consumers and ask how they're feeling, or understand how they're feeling and how you can help them. So yeah, that's effectively it for me.
Brilliant. Cheers, Ed. Thanks. That's absolutely great. And you presented that to the Ardmore Alliance, which is a collection of our clients, sort of head of marketing on the client side for us, and that was really well received. So it's great to get that out there and online. And if people, I suppose, are interested in the Ardmore Alliance and getting involved, then you just have to drop us a note, let us know,
Yeah.
and we'll see what we can do, really. I suppose the other bit as well, if anyone has any questions on this, they can put them in the comments or send us direct messages, because going forwards, we want to make this more of a regular thing and do more of these types of videos, find different people in the agency, so it's just not our two faces all the time talking, so it'd be good to get some like Q&A type sessions as well, people who are wondering what's going on and how we can do things. So that's great. We're going to label this as well, Ardmore On Demand. That's the way to do this going forward. Not Ardmore TV or radio, because that feels like it doesn't quite work. But so AOD, so we've got to get a logo done for that soon, and we'll put this up. So Ed, thanks very much. We'll probably end up speaking about 10 times today about other different things, but in the meantime,
I'm sure. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, Jason.